not actually mean it. And that's where I'd like to spend the remaining part of our time together today, talking about our heart. And this distinction about being able to say something, but our heart actually not intend it, that it's not really from it, or that it has no intention of following through on it. This notion about the heart is so important, and this distinction is great because your heart is you. Now, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. You're all intelligent people. You're here at Grace Fellowship Church. You're obviously intelligent people, right? Your heart is you. Nothing is more you and nothing more me than our heart, right? And it's this one part of us that will enter eternity. We'll live the rest of this day, the rest of our lives, into eternity and throughout eternity with this one part. Everything else is going to be different. Everything else is going to change in some fashion. But the heart is the one thing that we carry throughout eternity, whether good or bad, right or wrong, sinner or saint. I want you to do kind of a weird thing right now. So I don't know what kind of, especially those of you who are guests, we're glad that you're here today. I don't know what kind of church experience you've had before, but I always think that church is not intended to be a spectator sport. It's supposed to be an experience between every single person that's here. So I'm going to ask you to do something weird. You're not going to have to say anything to anybody. You're not even going to have to turn to the left or the right. I'm going to ask you to do something that's a little bit strange. You may have even thought that you were already doing it, but I doubt that many of us are. I'm going to ask you to go and find your heart. I want you to sit and hear that phrase for a second before I try to give you instruction. I want you to go and find your heart right now. Of course, I'm not asking you to go and find your pulse. I'm not asking you for you to do that. I'd like to ask you to take a moment, rather, and linger in the invisible part of who you are. Now, you might have thought, well, I showed up here, so there's something heart going on, and that's true. But sometimes it's possible to relegate the heart to the back, where it's not really connected to what's happening, right? A lot of times, and maybe I'll try to explain it, a lot of times the first thought that arrives in our being, maybe that's probably the easiest way to say it, because a lot of times we get these words mixed up, heart, soul, mind, thought, brain. I want to try and dissect a bit. A lot of times the first thought that rushes to the forefront of who we are isn't necessarily the heart that's talking. Do you know what I mean? I want to tease that idea out of it because this may be actually relating to you. If not now, at some point it probably would have. Some of you may be here for the first few times, one of the first few times, and it's maybe the most immediately applicable for you. I'm glad you're here. So thank you for coming and being here with us. And you're listening to the words that I am speaking right now. You're paying close attention because when you come into a place for one of the first few times, you're locking in on what's going on, right? You're listening to the songs that are sung and the manner in which they're played and sung. You're observing the way the building is laid out and wondering why. Why is it like that there? What's about that? What's about this church or about these people? You're watching the way people interact. You're watching how people are singing or not singing. You're observing the way that people spoke to you when you walked in. In every possible way, you're observing all these things and evaluating them notably with your mind. What do I think of this? Is this something right, wrong, good, bad, whatever it might be? Your mind is evaluating the trustworthiness. This is where it lands, and I want you to hear what I mean. You're judging credibilities. Whether you're doing it right now or not, I know I do, and I do it pretty frequently, especially when I'm walking into a conversation or a situation or a place for the very first time. I'm judging credibilities. I do it every single time I walk into a church that's not our own. I know the credibility of our church, and it's filled with phenomenal, authentic people. And so my guard of my mind can drop a bit because I can express a heart with our people, and hopefully them with each other. When I go into a place that I don't know, my mind is the first guard, and I'm judging the credibilities. Basically, we don't automatically let our heart accept everything from anyone. Fair? Fair? Fair enough? And you're probably doing that just like that I would if I were one of the first few times I was coming into church, or specifically this one. So it means it's possible that your heart today, when being asked to be located, could be actually relegated to the back for a moment while your mind is saying, I don't know if I trust this. Why do I want to give you this information? Or why do I want to let you sink in this idea? Why do I want you to feel or consider when I'm not even sure whether I trust it or not? And so it's fair to say that should be a little red flag that should probably have popped up in your mind. I don't know if I want to stick my heart out there. I can locate it, but I don't know if I'm going to make it available. You understand that little thing? That's the conversation that our heart and mind sometimes have without even us articulating it. It's what's going on inside of us. So I'm asking you to do something very intentional, which is to take a moment and soul reboot, which is to say, I want to actually go locate me and not just my guard, my first reflex. So I'm going to give you a second to do that. Hey, here's your heart. Hey, heart, here's you. Get reacquainted for a second. All right, so you can do that now. We can get now that we're actually consciously trying to think about, how does my heart process this? What am I really thinking? What am I really, how do I believe about this? How should I respond by will? These are the things that you should be doing. When your heart's engaged, you're asking those kind of questions of yourself. Now that we can do that, now that we are quite consciously keeping a close watch on this heart of ours, we can go to the Bible. Those of you who are here for the first time this summer or the first time with us, we've actually been going for the last 9 weeks through the book of Proverbs and covering so many different parts of the spiritual territory and everyday living in the book of Proverbs. And we're going to jump into the book of Proverbs today. We're going to talk about what does this collection of wisdom say about the heart. So we're going to jump into the back. So if you have a Bible, you're welcome to turn there. Otherwise, you'll be able to see it up on the screen if you don't have a Bible on your lap today. Proverbs 27:19, it says this: as water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart. This is a really important but simple statement. One's life reflects the heart. This proverb actually sounds like, wow, I know Solomon's supposed to be known as the wisest guy on earth, but this is kind of a no-duh. The way you live is how your heart is, right? This seems like it's a no-duh sort of thing, but apparently God thinks that every single person on the planet who would allow himself to interact with his truth would say, I guess I need to be reminded of it. I need to think about my life right now. What am I doing? And thus revealing who I am, right? What am I doing that reveals who I am? The Bible seems to reveal this time and time again, this really prickly and inconvenient truth. Apparently, it is not what we say that we believe that we believe. It is not what we say that we believe what we believe. It's what we do something about that's what we believe. The things that we do something about, the way that we live demonstrates reality. It's just the natural outflow. We'll do it. We'll always ultimately do it. Point in fact, Johnny Cash shared in the writing of 10,000 pages about the idea of love. Maybe he was in love with the idea of Vivian. Maybe he had no intention. Maybe he was more in love with the idea of him. I don't know. I can't get inside his mind. He even was so bold to claim and promise that he'd watch his heart really close. And that because of his love for this woman, he'd walk the line every single day. What I did not let you hear was the very next line. Does anyone know the song enough to know what the first line of the second verse is? I find it very, very easy to be true. That's a strange line, even more ironic than the rest of it. It is possible to say, I really think, feel, believe, want this, but have nothing like it really going on because it's just something we say. It's more lyric than lifestyle. And so God's actually really not all that interested in lyric. Unless the lyric penetrates to say, your lyric and your lifestyle need to get more lined up. He's not as much interested in how we say it or what we think we're saying we believe as to say, what does it look like on Monday? What does it look like on Monday? Solomon tells us that God is actively testing our hearts for these kinds of dissonance. I sang this on Sunday. I did that on Monday. I prayed this on Saturday morning. I did this on Saturday night. God's actively testing for this kind of dissonance, this disequilibrium and inequality to who we really think that we are, say that we want to be, and to who we really are. Well, Solomon gives us this, what will be today for us, the last definitive proverb to help us through this. And I want you to hear this because it's so simple, but it is so critical that every single person in this room, on the planet for that matter, needs it. It says this in Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, say this out loud with me, guard your heart. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Everything we do flows out of it, but guard your heart. Our heart needs serious, focused, intentional, thoughtful guarding, Solomon says. Guard your heart. I think we probably need to take that word a lot more seriously than we really, really do. Because again, our first reflection, or our reflexes aren't always what's really happening in the heart. Now, I got to be frank here because as I tell this story, those of you who don't know me, you would find if you came back every other week, you would probably discover that you'd hear me being more of a goof. Almost all of my stories as I go through life, I recognize that story is only good because I was such a goober. That only makes sense to me as a lesson in life because I really blew it. More often than not, I'm the goof of the story because that's the way I am. But as they say, even sometimes a blind dog finds a bone. You know the saying, right? Well, as arch rivals go, as I'm trying to find a way to express the importance of guarding, as arch rivals go, few get archier than the rivalry between two schools in Kansas City, two high schools, that they really hated each other. One called Tri-City, the other one Blue Ridge. These two schools hated each other. Basketball, baseball, soccer, it didn't matter. These schools detested each other. Anytime they had an opportunity to stick it to the other, they'd do it, that kind of a thing. They were always compared with one another because they're two similar-sized schools. In fact, they were the two largest Christian schools in the entire state of Missouri that I grew up in. And in some ways, this rivalry, because I got to see it early on from the outside. I did not go to these schools, and so I got to look at it. And as the rivalries grew and I got to look in on it, it was actually the thing that kind of compelled me to want to go to Tri-City, this high school, because they were so intense. If you've ever been in a game, if you've been watching a game, maybe especially if you're those of you who are sportsy kind of people, and you're like, I want to be in that situation. I want to be in that game. If you watched a football game, you're like, Cutler, come on, just give me the ball. That kind of a thing. You want to be on it because you're like, it's compelling. And I found myself with these rivalries like, oh, I could do that better. You know that? You know how you're like that? I'd give me the ball. I'd take care of that. As a young kid, I would watch these games like, I want to be in a situation like that. This crowd's amazing. The intensity, the history, the heritage, whatever it might be, the traditions. It's what compelled me. These two schools were long time hated rivals. And twice a year, nothing compared to the Tri-City Blue Ridge basketball games. And we obviously would play a home and away. Both teams got a chance to be at home. In my senior year, that I ended up going to Tri-City as a junior and a senior, my senior year, they got to host first, Blue Ridge did. And they beat us. It was very disappointing. It was very difficult. It was devastating. But we had one more chance because we were going to bring them to our place, a chance to redeem that defeat. Now, at Tri-City, it was our general view that, an otherwise undefeated season would still be a disappointment if Blue Ridge did not get handled in some fashion. There needed to be some embarrassment or humiliation. We wanted to be a part of that kind of thing. And so it was disappointing that we had lost, but we knew we had this one last chance. Well, they come to our place. It's one of the last few games of the year. I don't remember the gym ever being more packed. And that was saying something because this was a big rivalry and had happened many, many times. And our fans were very faithful anyway. This one literally went to the last few seconds of the game. Okay, this is a real story. It was very cool. It was down to the last few seconds. With 12 seconds, we were up by 1 point. Okay, and coming out of a timeout, Blue Ridge was going to get the ball at the half-court line. And they were going to get 12 seconds to see if they could just beat us outright. Now, you need to know something. From the very minute that I first walked into Tri-City, my coach was really clear with our entire team, me in particular, that defense wins championships. So the very first thing he's like working on 5 minutes into practice, the very first practice I ever had with him, is he was emphasizing this defense. The way that we guard, he said, will determine whether we are elated or whether we are in the dumps. Defense changes everything. This is the way he thought about things. And so he had us do something about being passionate and committed, and it really registered with me. He said, anytime you're on the floor, especially in these kind of moments, if you want to send a message both to them, but especially to yourself, here's what you're going to do. When you get on defense, you need to be low anyway. And here's what you do when you get on that floor, especially in situations like that. You get on there, you slap the floor. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where somebody slaps the floor, but it's kind of cocky, right? And that's the kind of person that Coach Hoisinger was. And he's like, get down there, get low, and then this, okay? This is how he thought. And I kind of dug that about him because he said, you know what, even if you're a terrible shooter, if you can't shoot worth a lick, you can always play defense. And that really resonated with me to the T because I couldn't shoot worth a lick. And so it's the one thing I could do. He's like, you know what, John, slap the floor and play defense. Keep low and move your feet. So if you play basketball, you know what that means. So the slap means it's going to be very, very difficult. What's getting ready to get up on you is not going to be good. That's what you tell the guy who's bringing the ball up. So the rivalry, last time we're ever going to play this team, it's 12 seconds left, we're up by 1. Did I mention, though, to you that there was a rivalry within this rivalry? It's a guy named Matt Masters. He was the class of 1990, the glorious class of 1990, just like me. Blue Ridge's guard was Matt Masters, and he had formerly been a star at Tri-City. As a freshman and sophomore, the kid was just a phenomenal athlete, a phenomenal basketball player, and he had been a star and a leader and a high scorer for them. Well, Blue Ridge lures our star to Blue Ridge. And so now, as a junior and a senior, he's been playing for them. He bails as a junior. I come in as a junior in high school to take his spot. So while I couldn't have naturally had the animosities towards Matt Masters that the kids who had grown up with him had, I got tuned into it pretty quick, if you get the idea. Old Matt Masters. It may have sweetened the pot a bit that I was told that his old girlfriend, who was still at Tri-City, was sweet on me now instead of him at the time. So I decided not to like her back just to make the rivalry even more hateful, right? And those 2 years of basketball, my junior and senior year and his as well, would end up being the historic height of this rivalry between these two schools. So there's 12 seconds to go. They have the ball at half court, and Matt Masters is going to be bringing the ball up. He's their point guard. So the ball gets passed to him just past half court. His ex-girlfriend is cheering for me and sneering at him. And what better time to slap the floor? So I slapped the floor. I said, you're not going to like what's getting ready to come up on you, boy, right? That kind of a thing. Yeah, so you feel passion. I mean, when there's a crowd literally on top of the floor, if you've ever played basketball, if you've been in a contest, you know how, whatever it is, it's how it feels. And you're feeling that. So they passed the ball, and I decided that I wanted to give him any space at all to move. Guarding meant a lot to me because it's the one thing I could do, especially with this guy. So I slapped the floor, and I decided I'm going to be up with him as close as I can get. He's going to have to beat me on the off the dribble to beat us in that situation. So bragging rights, reputations, getting everybody to tell this story. I don't know what he's doing today, but I doubt he's telling this story, and you'll understand why in a second. It seems to go without saying that we could not let them anywhere near our basket, and I could not let Matt Masters anywhere close to them. I was going to just try and stop him where he was. Just like you, everything you would have ever learned in that one moment when you know there's just 12 seconds and it's going to all come down one side or the other, I tried to summon every possible ounce of energy, everything that I'd ever learned in that one moment. Because you see, we guard what we prize most. This is not a story about basketball. We guard what we prize most. So with a slap of the floor, the ball was passed in. I'm up very tight on him. Truth be told, he's a better basketball player by a long shot than I ever was. But his mistake was to undervalue the one thing that he could do something with, his prized possession, the ball. He underestimated the short, little, pasty-faced white kid that was right in front of him, too. He's undervaluing that, and he for whatever reason, he decided just to be sloppy with the ball. And guess what the short, little, pasty-faced white kid did? I wanted the ball more than he did. And I just, like our coach had taught us for years, I popped it out. The ball was loose going that way. I grabbed it up, and I laid it in. And it was sweet bedlam in the place. When Bruce Springsteen sings the song Glory Days, that's the thing I think of, because that's my one shining moment in convincing my wife that, I'm, somebody to marry. That was, if there's two glory moments in life, that's one of the two. Of course, now I'm short and soft and bald and useless on a basketball court, but it reveals a very, very great truth to me, at least. We guard what we prize most. When's the last time you felt like that about your heart? Really, really consciously thought about it. My heart is the only thing I have that will last into eternity. That's my own. That kind of slap the floor. The scriptures in Hebrews says that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. There are people curious and longing, people who have moved into eternity. I don't know whether they see us. I think they're probably just singing about Jesus, but they're thinking about us. And one day they're wondering, will I see that person in this place? What will we know of their life? people that have gone before, parents, grandparents, people who are wonderful examples, people like Coach Hoisinger for me, people who have been an influence on our lives, they care deeply. We're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, it says, and they're wondering, do they passionately love and guard their heart? Will they do everything possible? Will they summon every ounce of energy for themselves? You know, we're getting ready to, we just spent time dedicating babies today, and we got the joy of doing that ourselves. Well, dads, moms, you know there's nothing that would step in the way or would interfere with that baby. We would step in, right? We guard what we prize the most. Oftentimes, we become disconnected from our heart, from our most eternal part. We stop realizing we haven't thought much about our heart. We've not been thinking and believing and acting with our heart. And what we do is what our heart is. At least it is right now. Because there's diversions. Listen, we live in the richest place on the planet. There are diversions galore. There are temptations trying to compel us, tempting choices that bring us to decisions about what matters the most to us, to do what we really, really want, to reveal our heart. Those are the kind of moments that I guess I'm trying to say is the moments like this where we say to ourselves, when our head and our emotions and our heart somehow try to meet in the middle, and they start talking, and they say, I can ask God for forgiveness for this in the morning. I only live once. You ever said that to yourself? I only live once. I can always ask for forgiveness. That's what God's good for. I only live once. The ironic part of that is that's so true. I only live once. You only live once. You only get one heart. You got to live forever with that one heart's one life in all of its choices. There's no redos. In God's world, there are no redos. No matter what we've been maybe told by others, it's not true. There's no redos. It's one. And then we live with it. Every moment counts. Every moment matters. It's our heart. That's why Solomon says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. We are what we do. We believe, in fact, what we are doing. What are you doing right now in your life that is revealing who you really are? And if there's something that doesn't seem to line up with the kind of world that you know God's trying to compel you to call you into, there's a simple thing. Your heart gets to say, I'm changing. I'm making another decision. God, please forgive me and please empower me to do the right kind of thing. I want to be the right kind of person. When I enter eternity, I want the people to go, yes, yes, you did it. All the things I poured into your life, son, student, player, friend, you did it. Bedlam. Because what matters the most to them right now in eternity is your heart right now. Your heart. Because your heart is indestructible. It is indestructible. It will live forever. You will see it in its fullness one day, as God will, and as this whole great cloud of witnesses will as well. And it's on this eternality and this indestructibility, I would just encourage you to keep it soft. While it is indestructible, it can be very soft. It can be very open, and it can be kept a close eye, a close watch on, because it matters so much to God. It's the difference between heaven and hell. It's the difference between good and bad. It's the difference between memorable and meaningful and wasted. The heart. That's why I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. It's why we walk the line. Lyrics and lives can be different. That's why you're in church today. Because all of our lives need to be lined up with our lyrics so that our lifestyles look exactly like what God's calling us to. Because that's the greatest joy. There will be no bedlam, joy-filled bedlam, like the day we get to see him face to face and we say, I did my best. I did my best. And when your mother and your father greet you there, when your grandparents, and the people who've been wonderful examples, and they went into eternity with Christ, you're going to look them in the eye and say, I did my best. I focused. I guarded. I kept my heart. I walked the line. Lord God, we're imperfect. We're sinners. That's why this thing makes so much sense, because we don't often do that. We certainly don't always do it. We're not perfect. No one ever has been except for you, your son. Lord, please help us today. As we recognize our grace in you, we also see our calling in you, and that is to live this kind of a life, to have our lives line up, to be authentic, Lord, to be true, but to have it look like the lifestyle that you've given us. Thank you for our hearts, God, that makes us who we are. We thank you, Lord, that you love us in that way. And I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. And all of God's people said, amen.
And maybe some of us, well, what's there to do? What can I be doing? I actually have a couple announcements for you guys about getting connected with the church and getting connected with our community. Now, in case you didn't know, Greg, where's Greg? Is Greg in the room here? Greg's all the way in the back. There is a mission trip that we're not just talking about, it is happening. Okay, this coming March, we're going to be going over to Guatemala. It's still not too late to sign up, but there is the first deadline coming up, August 3rd, if you're interested in getting the lowest rates. But if you're interested, if you just have questions, go see Greg. He's got some really good information and really going to make an impact here, not just here in the church, but globally. Other opportunity is November 23rd, we're going to be hosting a 5K run in the community. Now, it's not just us doing an event so we feel good about ourselves, but really trying to make an imprint of Grace Fellowship Church in the community and really making a difference for Christ. And Jen said, Sean, we need more volunteers, and if you're interested in getting in shape, we need runners or even walkers. So if you're interested in doing those things, come see Jen. And lastly, if you're a guest, thank you guys so much for being here. We have a card here. You guys would fill it out and drop it off at the connection counter. They just want to pray for you guys, and they also have a little bag of cookies for you. Okay? Are you guys glad we did this here together? Amen, isn't it? So hopefully today, what we did today is going to impact what we do tomorrow. You guys have a good week. We'll see you then.